Hey guys, what is up? Ioki here, bringing you the patch 11.6 tier list. Now, it has been a couple patches since we've made a tier list like this, so there are a lot of interesting changes. There's itemization changes, meta changes, a lot of new champions that we've added to this list. So I'm not going to waste too much time going over the tier 5. As we move up and up the list, that is going to be the champions that I highly recommend you to be abusing, aka, learning and mastering, abusing, to climb the rank ladder. But I'm not going to spend too much time down here in the tier 5. This is basically a champion pool that is, these champions have just been cast upon the wayside when it comes to support. Like, set support used to be really, really strong. Like, I believe set support was even being played in pro play at one point along with Camille. But set, Camille, Sion, Ornn, Fiddlesticks, Ivern, Rammus, these champions are just pretty much dead in the support role. Whether it be the meta, whether it be the, brand new Season 11 items, itemization changes. For whatever reasons, I absolutely do not, under any circumstances, really recommend you playing these champions if your sole intention is to climb. Now, you guys know me; I play all kinds of off-meta stuff. Obviously, if your priority is to have fun, these champions can be on the table. But if you're actually looking to climb and contribute to your team in meaningful ways, probably should be avoiding these champions. So, tier 4 is, these champions are in a pretty similar spot. They're, not necessarily trash, or you're not trolling by locking in these champions, but they're not going to be contributing in ways or as easily or as efficiently as the champions higher up the list. So once again, I'm not going to spend too much time on the tier 4s. I just generally don't recommend you play these champions. You are 100% hurting your climb by playing these champions in the support role. I'll quickly go over each one of my reasoning for why. Taric, outside of having a Master Yi duo and funnel, which is pretty much a dead strategy and is typically used in the mid lane anyways, I just don't think Taric really brings anything to the table. One, he's not really my style of champion. I prefer a more proactive, whereas he is a reactive type champion. Just not a big fan of Taric, and I don't think he's great right now. Poppy, outside of picking her for like some maybe anti-mobility reasons, like the enemy team has a ton of dashes, and you need your last pick on the team, and you need a tank support. Maybe you can lock in Poppy in that very specific niche scenario, but overall, I don't think Poppy's great. Soraka, they have introduced so much anti-healing into this game. It is absurd. I feel for anyone that really, really enjoys playing Soraka, because playing Soraka in Season 11, when literally every single role can very easily, with 800 gold, build anti-heal, it's just, she's pretty much just a dead champion. I mean, I know they did give her those buffs, and she's like, she feels somewhat better, but the fact that her role as a primary healer is countered by an 800 gold item. And when you have all these other champions that are bringing so much more to the table, like Seraphine, for instance, who heals along with brings a game-changing ultimate and peel and speed ups and CC and poke, like she just can't compare, honestly. Braum, I don't even want to talk about Braum. He's trash anyways. Don't play Braum, guys. Galio, once again, I almost put him in tier 5 because I almost think this champion's just, there's some people who swear by this champion and think that he's like a better team fighty version of Leona, but I'm not seeing it. Maybe that's a me problem, but every time I lock in Galio, I regret it. Sona, same boat as Soraka. They have just been simply outclassed by Seraphine's existence. There is very little reason to play any enchanters outside of Yuumi, Lulu, Seraphine, and I'll get more into those as we go up the tier list. But yeah, Sona, dead champion. Nautilus, I have put a lot of time and effort into making Nautilus work. I've really, really looked at every angle, and he is, as I mentioned with Galio, he's a much stronger team fighter than Leona, but his laning phase is just so much worse, and in the current game state, I just can't ever recommend playing Nautilus over Leona. He's much more reliant on Aftershock, and it's much harder to proc it on him, since his auto attacks are so slow, he can literally be interrupted out of casting them. He's also dependent on landing the hook. You can't engage through minions. The list goes on and on and on as to why Nautilus is not very good. Neeko, too short of a range. She's basically a bad version of Lux. Shin, once again, I know I compare a lot of the tank supports to Leona, and he is what I've always referred to as a more dangerous, riskier, higher damage version of Leona. He does bring some sort of unique utility with his ultimate and his auto canceling with his W, but again, can't recommend him over Leona, and she's kind of the golden standard right now. As to when you're locking in tank supports, people don't want Shin on their team. People don't want Nautilus. They want you to lock Leona. So that's kind of what I compare a lot of the tank supports to. Annie, I do think she's slightly undervalued. She does do Annie things even from the support position, and the fact that last season they gave her E the ability to be cast on other champions, on your allied champions, that does bring a new layer to what this champion brings to the table, but it's not enough. Vigar, same thing. He was very, very heavily hurt by the removal of the glacial items such as Twin Shadows and GLP. You basically have to bring glacial on him to have any sort of utility or usefulness in lane, and there are not glacial items that basically make use of the keystone. So it's a dead keystone equals a dead champion. Vel'Koz, there are, like I said, there are some people that swear by this champion. I don't see it. I think he's a much worse version of Xerath, who I don't think is very good to begin with. Jarvan, the only way he's remotely viable in the support role is by going AP and rushing Moonstone into Zhonya's, which can be fun and is interesting, but you're not going to out Moonstone the actual Moonstone champion, so why do it? Tahm Kench, completely dead champion until they rework him. But we will be giving him another fair shot once they rework him, so I'm excited for that. Gragas. Now, I struggled with putting him in tier 4 because I do think he's like an insanely good champion. However, I think if a lot of the strength in Gragas is in being a flex pick, which if you guys aren't familiar with that is, you can first pick Gragas in the support role, and the enemy team is going to assume that that is a jungler or a top role. Gragas is very, very versatile. He can play mid, top, jungle, pretty much anything except for marksman role. And so I think there's a little bit of a strength there, but you know, you're going tank. He's not necessarily going to actually one-shot someone. He's not going to be the tankiest. I would actually move this guy to a low tier 3, but that's as generous as I can be. Trundle, troll pick. Until they give Trundle a little bit more love in the support role, he's basically an anti-tank champion that has one version of Peel that is very easy to mess up and misplay, aka his pillar. Yeah, until they give him a little bit of love, I want to be playing him support. Anivia, the only reason she's not tier 5 is because this champion is bonkers broken, and you can make it work in the support role, but there's no reason to pick this in the support role over the mid role. So, for that reason alone, low tier 4. Tier 3. Now, these are the champions that I would say are average. You can plop these into team comps that suit them, and you can pop off, but they're not necessarily really great blind picks, and you should really only be playing these champions if you are skilled with them or if you're using them as counter picks. That's a lot of the strengths of these champions. Now, for patch 11.6, there are some really, really interesting changes to the Luden's Tempest item, which is basically not being built on any supports at the moment, but they're making the Ludens a lot more of a viable mage support item because the cooldown for the passive can now very, very easily be reduced on this patch by 0.5 seconds. So for champions like MF, who continuously damages with her E, Ludens can be an actual, like, really good poke support item. So I've moved MF out of tier 4, which is troll pick, into a pretty decent pick. Not ideal, but decent. So let's go through these one by one. Shaco was actually god tier like 2 patches ago. He can do some really, really fun and unique things by going invisible with his Q, popping up beside a carry and Everfrosting them out of invisibility. And while they're rooted by their Everfrost, you can plop down a trap, and the Everfrost root actually lasts long enough for the trap to activate. So it's a nice little CC chain combo. They've removed a little bit of his burst, I believe, so he's not actually going to be one-shotting a lot of carries. So for that reason alone, he's still in that, like, risky. Your team's going to kind of hate you by locking in this champion tier. So very, very fun, very unique, and I have been playing a lot of him and enjoying him, but I can't in good conscience recommend him above tier 3. Zilean, I love Zilean to my core. I used to absolutely spam Zilean, but he's just kind of an outdated, weird champion. His utility that he brings is very unique, but it is very team dependent. He basically is a walking guardian angel, which is very, very valuable to have. But by locking him in the support role, you essentially are saying, hey, I bring one thing to laning phase, and that's bombs. He's another champion that is very, very much suffering from the removal of Glacial Augment. Well, not the removal of it, but it's a dead rune because you don't get the glacial items. Like, if you go Glacial Augment on Zilean, you are only going to get use of it out of your auto attacks. And you constantly shove the lane by trying to harass people. If you're playing in any decent elo, I'm talking like even above gold, people know that, oh, the Zilean support threw a bomb on me, I walk that into my wave, and all of a sudden, now their wave is shoving. So, can't recommend him. Rakan, if you guys are looking for strong team fights, or if you're playing in Clash, or you're playing with comms, or with players that you generally just trust to be, good players, I think Rakan is quite good. I've actually moved him up to high tier 3 because Shurelia's, which is his main passive, also got a massive buff this patch. So I'm going to be keeping my eye on Rakan. I don't think he's a super strong solo queue champion because I think he does have that reliance on teamwork and letting someone else engage and then empowering their engage with a follow-up engage. I don't think he's great as a primary engage unless he has his flash up. But if you have like a Hecarim or a Malphite that can engage and then you engage on top of them, very strong champion. So I'm going to be watching Rakan and seeing if I need to move him to tier 2. But I mostly only play Rakan when I'm in Clash or in tournaments. Teemo, once again, there's going to be a new build for Teemo. That Ludens is your poison from your mushrooms and that continuous DPS that's going to lower that Ludens over and over and over. I think Teemo's actually going to be a pretty decent pick. And I always have Teemo a lot higher than most people have him on tier list because I genuinely think he's the most underrated support in the game. This champion does a ridiculous amount of damage with basically no items. He is not gold. He's not gold gated. He doesn't need 2-3 items to come online. You walk up, you auto queue someone, and boom, you won the trade. Teemo support, guys. Seriously, I love it. And I'm definitely going to be trying out the new Ludens build, so watch out for the tuber. This one makes me a little bit sad because I am such a big Senna lover. I love playing that champion, and Riot did throw her a massive bone with like that one patch where they gave her 7 buffs, but they also gutted her best build by lowering her usefulness with the Rageblade, which means that the Kraken Rageblade build is basically dead. And it's probably still her best build right alongside the tank build with Divine Sunder, but man, they really kneecapped her with that. Hopefully Senna at some point during the season will be back on top. I would say the biggest strengths of Senna right now is that you can do fasting Senna, but that's not really even playing her as proper support. So if you don't know what fasting Senna is, I've got lots of videos on it. So just YouTube search fasting Senna Aoki. But it's basically just like putting a tank in front of you and playing Senna as a marksman that doesn't farm. On to the next one. Ashe, once again, kind of in the same boat as Teemo. I think she's really undervalued as a support. Is she top tier? No, but you can rush CDR. You can rush those juicy Ionian Lucidity boots and get your ulti on a very, very low cooldown. You rush Imperial Mandate, you rush Lucidity boots, boom, you're an ult bot. You got pretty decent engage and some pretty decent slows and utility. Swain has fallen from grace. I think the meta does not suit him at all right now. I would much rather play... I basically think of Swain as like an AP mage Thresh. I would just rather play Thresh. Thresh is much better right now. So Lux is the much better version of Neeko, but still I want to say she's top tier. I see a lot of people claiming that she's god tier, and I would say one of her strengths is that you can kind of go utility build with like Guardian into even Moonstone if you wanted. The more common build is just going like Dark Harvest or Comet into a full damage build. And when it comes to that, I think she has way too many hard matchups with Leona, Blitzcrank, Thresh all being pretty good picks along with Alistar. I think she has way too hard of a time in lane. Maokai, kind of another fall from grace. He was absolute tier 1 a couple patches ago, but they nerfed Imperial Mandate and they nerfed Maokai Saplings. He's still pretty good. He still has a pretty good win rate. I think he's hovering somewhere around 52% win rate. But compared to what he was before, I personally am not having as much fun and with him, and I don't think he's quite as quote-unquote abusable with after those nerfs. So I would say he's somewhere in the middle. Nami has really, really struggled with Season 11. She's a healer that doesn't abuse Moonstone very efficiently. She's, a poke in lane. It takes her too long to get her Imperial Mandate, and once she gets it, like, she's basically already outclassed by the mid-game. I just think Nami's really struggling with Season 11. Same with Karma. There is a very nice CDR max Karma build, aka CDRma, that's floating around that I think elevates her a little bit. I think she's one of those champions that just really, really makes good use of high CDR, aka Ability Haste. Do you guys still call it a CDR? Because I do. Does anyone actually call it Ability Haste? But yeah, I think she's just one of those champions that really makes good use of having very, very low cooldowns. You're consistently refreshing your Moonstone. You're consistently pumping those big team-wide heals. You're getting some decent poke in lane. But I can't put her anywhere above middling, tier 3, because I do think she has a ton of rough matchups, and she's just outclassed by Seraphine, Lulu, Yumi. I have a really hard time recommending any enchanters that aren't those 3 champions. Xerath, he's kind of in that same boat where a lot of people swear by him. I'm not impressed. The buff to Ludens I don't believe is going to help him at all. And he was already running Ludens, so yeah, he's nowhere. He doesn't impress me. I've already talked a little bit about MF, and the Ludens change should be good, should be decent. I'll keep my eye on her. Malphite, same boat as Teemo. I think Malphite is underrated as a support. You literally just chill out until level 6, and then you kill every lane in the game. But yeah, people don't want to wait till level 6, so we've already talked about Gragas as well. Okay, getting into Tier 2. These champions are very good and should be practiced. They are not the cream of the crop, but these are very, very good champions to be spamming, especially in solo queue. I almost put Bard in Tier 1 because I think Bard one-tricks are absolutely having the time of their life. I think Bard is stronger than he's been in years at the moment for Bard one-tricks. I don't think people that don't put in the time and effort to master Bard should necessarily be spamming him because he does, like a lot of immobile champions, have hard matchups right now. But Bard one-tricks, I mean, I'm pretty sure like the rank 1 on Korea was a Bard one-trick. It might have been EU West. I can't remember. But definitely it was a rank 1 that was a Bard trick. Bard one-trick. Morgana is one of those champions who is always elevated by the fact that she is one of the hardest counter to hard engaged champions. And hard engaged champions are the bread and butter of bot lane at the moment. So Morgana is elevated to Tier 2 purely because you see an enemy Leona on the team, make her miserable by locking in Morgana. Would I be blind picking Morgana? No, not necessarily. I also wouldn't be going like full AP Dark Harvest builds or anything like that. I would be going Guardian. I would be trying to bring utility to your team, possibly even building Moonstone. But yeah, I think mostly what brings her to Tier 2, aka very good on the current patch, is her Black Shield. Now, you've already heard me talk a lot about Seraphine. Surprisingly, Seraphine's win rate and support really isn't that high, and I think it's because the tanks are kind of running the Asylum right now. However, if you can get to mid lane, mid game, or late game, and have a Seraphine exist on your team, bro, she just presses buttons, and she is insanely useful. Like, if you can convince your team to 5v5, you will almost never lose a team fight with Seraphine. Now, Lulu is a little bit different than Seraphine. She doesn't want to necessarily empower an entire team or hit these big, huge 4 or 5-man ultimates in team fights. She wants to empower a hyper carry. And there are a lot of hyper carries in Season 11. With all this new itemization, there is a million new ways to burst people 100 to 0, and all you need is one person on your team to pop off. All you need is a fed jungler, fed top laner, fed mid laner. Lulu is a perfect pick. Her laning it's adequate, it's not bad, and she does use Moonstone relatively decently, but you're really picking her hoping that someone on your team pops off. Now, if you want to take things into your own hands, or hand, pick Blitzcrank, because I think Blitzcrank is quite good. I think he's been quite good, possibly even floating under the radar a little bit, and he's got a cool new skin coming out, so practice your Blitzcrank and be ready for Space Groove Blitzcrank. But yeah, there's really not much else to say about him. Everyone knows what Blitzcrank does. It's what he's always done, and I think that he's one of those simple kits that still just works, because a pick, when it comes to early game, a pick is a pick, and when it comes to late game, a pick is a pick. And typically in late game, a pick is a GG. So, yeah, I think Blitzcrank is really, really good. I think people are locking in a lot of immobiles this season. And as long as you're not picking Blitzcrank into, like, Leona or Alistar, then you're going to get a lot done with them if you can land your hooks. Zyra is probably the strongest mage in the game when it comes to bot lane. She just deals a lot of damage. I also think that she is going to be a Ludens abuser this patch. So, I haven't tried it, obviously, because the patch isn't out. But just looking at patch notes and putting that together with what I know about Zyra, I think she's going to be dealing a lot of damage. She's going to get that Ludens cooldown very, very low. Janna is weirdly strong right now, mostly because of her disengage capabilities against the very strong engaged tanks, and mostly just because I think that Janna has gone without nerfs for a really, really long time. I know that there is a roaming Janna that was very high elo in Korea. I get asked about them all the time in my chat. I think that that's a fringe case. You shouldn't necessarily look at that and think, oh, wow, I'm going to play Janna and also roam. I think that that's a very specialized playstyle that they developed for themselves. I don't even think Janna is a very strong roamer, nor do I recommend you to lock in Janna with the sole intention of roaming. I think you should choose some of the champions that are very strong at roaming. But yeah, Janna's quite good right now. Pyke! Now this is a good one. Now I'm excited for this. So last patch, they made a very specific Pyke buff. They kind of retooled the way that his passive works, that greatly benefits Pyke support and basically kills Pyke mid. So I am sad for Pyke mid players. Rip Davemon. I am sad for Pyke mid players because it's a very unique thing. It's a very, unique way to approach and play the champion. But I'm so glad that they're retooling him into a support so that they can give him some actual good buffs. Because this champion, I love him so much. If you watch my stream, you know how much I love playing this champion. He's so fun, but he's basically punishing to yourself. You are basically only playing Pyke until now because he's fun, right? So the passive buffs from last patch are pretty juicy as long as you're around 2 people. And this patch, he's getting 4 seconds off of his E at max rank. So you're going to be coming into that mid game, and you're going to be able to make a lot bolder of plays knowing that you have 4 seconds less off of that E to actually get out. So you go in, get the kill, get out. I think Pyke is actually going to be pretty freaking good. I almost put him into tier 1 for this patch, but I'm going to hold off on that and try him out and see how the matchups feel and see how he feels in the meta, because I know that he is one of those champions that was kind of left on the wayside when it comes to mythics. They didn't make an AD support mythic, so he's basically just stuck building Duskblade, which is quite expensive if you don't snowball. But yeah, I've got a lot to say about Pyke, obviously, but I'm very excited for this patch. I do think this is an actual god tier buff. I think it's going to elevate his win rate by at least 1.5 to 2%. And yeah, I'm ready to play some Pyke, boys. Tier 1. These champions are the best of the best in the current meta and should 100% be played if you want to climb. Let's get it out of the way. Leona's been queen of the bot lane for a long time, and seeing as she has like 3 more skins coming out this season, I don't think they're going to nerf her, to be quite honest. Yeah, I've talked about her matchups. She's got insanely good matchups. She's got insanely good itemization this season. She's great. Leona's just queen of the bot lane at the moment. Rell, this is a controversial one. A lot of people think Rell sucks. When she first came out, everyone said she was a troll champion. And then people kind of learned her role in the game and learn how to itemize her, and most importantly, they learn how to play with her because she's a very, very team-dependent champion. I mean, she can't even use half of her kit if there's no allies around. I personally think Rell is very, very good. However, I would be a little hesitant to be spamming her in solo queue, maybe duo. Maybe if you have a duo bot and can communicate, because she's got so many cool interactions. Like, for instance, Rell Samira is god tier. You put your E onto Samira, and you communicate to your ADC, hopefully through comms, to dash into the enemy team, and then you have an unmissable stun. So lots of cool interactions like that, lots of cool mastery things that you could do with this champion. I would say there's more Rell nerfs on the way. So she's pick or ban in pro play at the moment. You flash W alt midair, and there's like basically no counterplay. You get free engages. That being said, she is very, very team dependent. You need your team to be on the same page because this champion does 0 damage by herself. So she is god tier. Maybe I would hold off on playing her in solo queue necessarily. Try her out once or twice, see how it feels, but definitely play her when you have a duo or when you're in Clash or any other tournament. Thresh. This one kind of snuck up on us, guys. There hasn't been really any changes to Thresh, but there he is, sitting atop tier 1. Absolute god tier pick. My friend says that he thinks the Thresh is so good right now because people are just now realizing that his itemization is much better than last season. Like last season, he couldn't really use Locket because there was a range debuff. So he was kind of like building Redemption, I guess, as his main item, maybe Zeke's. But now he actually has a mythic that he can use, and I think this kind of just snuck up on everybody. I think he's really, really great, like insanely good. I've always said he has like a god tier kit, probably has the best support kit in the entire game. Lantern is so undervalued. But yeah, now people know he's god tier, guys. Let's get when it comes to talking about god tier. I am sure you've seen this in your game, guys. There is no way that FaZe Rush Alistar doesn't get nerfed in the very near future. FaZe Rush Alistar is the absolute future. If you don't believe me, check out my FaZe Rush Alistar build. He is the best Hex Slash abuser. He's one of the tankiest champions of the game due to his ult giving flat reduction, and he doesn't have to go Aftershock. That is just such an understated advantage over every other support tank in the game. Leona, Aftershock. Thresh basically has to go Aftershock or Guardian. Alistar, insanely tankier than both of them just by existing. His combos are insane. His Hex Flash abuse is insane. FaZe Rush is insane on this champion. Play this champion. If you aren't playing FaZe Rush Alistar, you aren't trying to climb. Brand, we've talked about the Ludens changes. I do think that he's going to be absolute god tier with the Ludens changes, and it's going to be nice to have some different itemization, because right now you're basically going Liandry's into Demonic Embrace every single game. So I think that he's going to be able to get that Ludens passive down quite well. I personally run Comet, but I will experiment with a Dark Harvest build with the new build. He's going to be very, very pokey. You're going to have Dark Harvest, fire bouncing around in all kinds of team fights. Luden's going down on real low cooldown. It's going to be a good time to be a Brand player. I will warn you, he has a lot of hard matchups, because look at these four. All four of these things absolutely annihilate Brand in lane. But outside of matchups, if you see that they don't lock in one of these four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, then lock in Brand in 1v9, guys. Yuumi, don't have too much to say about her other than she's kind of the same thing as Lulu, where you need one person on your team to pop off, and then Yuumi just empowers that person. She's in the same boat as Rell, where I don't necessarily recommend spamming her in solo queue, but if you have some sort of coordination or just blind faith in your solo queue teammates, go ahead and lock in the Yuumi, and she will straight allow someone else to 1v9. And if that sounds fun to you, then great. It personally doesn't sound fun to me, but I would be a fool to, underplay how strong Yuumi is at the moment. Guys, that is going to conclude my patch 11.6 tier list. I know it's been a couple patches since we've done these. Since we've done one of these, so there's been a lot of changes, a lot of shifts. I think I've tried to be pretty thorough about why everyone is where they are. But if you have any questions, let me know down in the comments, and I will try to get to as many of them as I can. I'm usually pretty good about answering them. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tier list. I hope it's helped you and educated you in a way. And good luck climbing on patch 11.6, guys. Peace.